Welcome to the Bridge Church Next Gen podcast. Thanks for joining us today. As always, it is Pastor Blake, and joining me,
Pastor Philip Hahn,
the best co-host around. We're so excited to get into what we are talking about today, something that I think is incredibly difficult to do and is something that parents struggle with.
the big discipline.
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 How do we do it? Because kids make us angry. They do dumb things. They can sometimes be annoying and push our buttons, especially at the worst times when there's already things that they don't even know about that are going wrong, and then they can add on to it. And it's easy for us to react emotionally when students, kids disappoint or do things that we go, we've talked about this, right? And I am having a lot of assumptions here, Pastor Phil. You can help me with these assumptions, but I would imagine it has to be infuriating when something keeps coming up, something keeps happening after multiple discussions or groundings or punishments. And so we want to talk today about how do you effectively discipline, how do you biblically discipline with love, with grace, and with mercy, but to discipline, to not just be a pushover, to not just let your kids do whatever you want, because I think we would agree.
Yeah, to not discipline does more harm.
Right, right.
Even bad discipline is better than no discipline. No discipline basically raises a warped human being that does serious psychological and social damage.
Interesting. And I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, think about the 1950s hard-nosed dad who spanked his kids anytime they looked at him cross-eyed and demanded respect like some kind of a military, drill sergeant. Their kids grew up respecting authority, even if they grew up with PTSD.
Sure.
They grew up knowing not to do certain things, and so even bad discipline was better than the kid who gets no consequences at all. They run off the rails and they become the serial killers, man.
Sure.
Those are the weirdos. I mean, you don't want to just not discipline your kids.
Yeah, they could be serial killers.
Now, I'm not saying you need to be. I'm not saying you need to be drill sergeant either.
Right.
There's a better way to do it.
No, I think that we'll just go to the first question then. I mean, how do you, speaking as a parent, but also someone who's done ministry with students for 20 years?
Professionally for 20 years.
For 20 years. I mean, that's a whole other discussion. How do you discipline at church, right? That's its own scope. It's a
similar principle. But I would say this is specifically more in the context of the home,
right?
And parents and kids and
so how do we go about raising our kids in a way to respect discipline, to honor discipline, to not enjoy it, right? Because that's right. It's not the purpose for them to always enjoy it, but to understand it maybe.
The most productive change in anybody's life always starts with you before you ever look to anybody else. So you need to change the way you think about discipline, that it's never about punishment. Punishment says, I'm angry, I'm going to take it out on you.
Right.
I'm going to do something to you that makes me feel better. Go to your room. I don't want to deal with you,
Sure.
Or I'm going to spank you because I'm angry and I want to get it out. Those are emotional reactions, and that does not disciple the kid. The root of discipline is disciple.
Okay.
It's what would best help you avoid this mistake in the future and make a better choice next time.
Sure.
And so that shift in your head will dramatically change the way you discipline if you think of it as discipleship.
Okay.
So if Jesus were trying to correct this behavior, he probably wouldn't yell and point to your room and say, go. He would probably have something to say. He would probably have a natural consequence. He would probably have a lot of grace. He would probably have a lot of empathy and patience with you. So think, what would Jesus do? You don't need a WWJD bracelet this thing, but punishment makes you feel better. Discipline helps the child grow.
Right. So how do you deal with that situation then where, let's just give an example. The kid's room's a mess. You've already told them to clean it up. And on top of that, they didn't do their homework, right? And they're playing. You walk upstairs to talk to your kid, how's your day, everything, and they're playing video games. There's an assignment missing. The room is still a mess. And this is multiple offenses, right? So what's the approach there for discipling?
Step one is you can't make a proper decision on anything if your emotions are involved. So the first step is go brain dead. You can't react to how you're feeling in the moment. You have to actually take a deep breath, reset your brain. wipe the slate dry
Sure.
so you're not thinking about how you feel about it. You have to go brain dead and like, okay, I need to make a decision. I need to think about what my response to this is, not react to how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And so go brain dead so that you can remove the emotion and make a decision, an intentional choice on what should happen next.
Sure.
When you remove that emotion, it helps to reset your system and make a logical discipleship choice as opposed to reacting in emotion and just punishing blindly.
Right. So you don't go and grab the game console and chuck it out the window or anything.
I might grab the game console, but it will be after a thoughtful consideration of what would most productively
smash
help the
it on the
child.
ground.
Yeah. As far as methods of discipline, I don't think that's really relevant to this conversation.
Sure.
You know, whether you're a timeout, a spanking, a talking to. I mean, there's plenty of research out there that says which ones are more productive than others, but that's not really the point. The point of discipline is to stop and think, okay, what's going to help this child make a better choice in the future? There are some ways that you can make it a little bit more effective.
Okay.
When a kid does something that they shouldn't or doesn't do something they should, a parallel consequence that matches the crime is probably the most effective in helping them make a better choice next time.
Sure. So give me parallel consequence. What is an example of one of those things?
It's a punishment appropriate to the crime, like, or I should say discipline. But yeah, if they snuck downstairs and binged out on all the Halloween candy, well, you hurt your body. A natural parallel consequence would be you need to fix what you did to your body.
Okay.
So burn off the calories, do 10 laps around the house.
Like outside the house?
Sure.
Put some shoes on and get running.
Yeah. Or you hurt your sister. Now you have to do something nice for her. Or you broke your brother's toy. Now a parallel consequence is you lose one of your toys.
Yeah.
And so if you can find a consequence that's appropriate for that crime, that helps them to associate a natural cause and effect.
Sure.
That will help them make better choices next time.
Yeah. And I know we plan to talk about some other discipline issues as far as lying, right? Or stealing. Or,
Lying is a whole nother podcast. We'll
we
get
will,
to that.
We will cover that for sure because I know that's something parents deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Is their student lying to them, which would require discipline as well, I'm sure. And what do you do with those situations that are a little bit bigger than breaking a toy or eating some candy, but it's maybe a respect thing where you can say, hey, we're going to go do this because your parallel consequence, and they just say, no, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, rebellion, like a flat-out resentment of you, is probably the most important one to go brain dead on because that is the one that triggers us
You're
as
like,
parents.
oh,
It's
what
like,
did you just say to me?
Yeah, it's
What
like
did you-
it's like, oh no, you didn't.
Exactly.
It's like I'm gonna make you remember this moment.
Yeah.
You know? So going brain dead in that moment is probably the most important. But there's this really there is a way to do it so that the kids respect you instead of resent you, and it might take a while.
Yeah.
But if you can take your discipline and weave empathy into that,
Sure.
it helps with making things, it helps them feel loved instead of rejected. It helps them feel respect instead of resentment. If they resent you, if they're rebellious towards you, they probably have some sense that you've been attacking them. Whether it's true or not, that's how they feel. They feel like you're against me. You're not for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to rebel against you because you're the establishment that's trying to hold me back. You're something that's opposing me.
Yeah.
And if you by your empathy say, I feel bad for you,
Right.
I still love you, I'm on your side, that attitude will eventually, over the course of their childhood, overcome that rebellious thought and think, oh, wow, they really were always there for me.
Right.
And so the way you do that is you actually have to feel bad. You can't manufacture that as a fake emotion.
Sure.
You actually have to stop,
Kids will
reset
tell,
your brain.
right? They can tell if you're faking.
Oh yeah, they've got a fakeometer that's more accurate than any of ours. But if you come to the kid and say, "Oh, I am so sad that you have to face the consequence of this choice. It really hurts me that you have to endure discomfort now." Or it's so sad you hurt somebody. And it's sad that you're going to have to feel some pain yourself in the consequence. I'm sorry that this had to happen. Of course, apologizing is not necessarily, apologizing implies that it's your fault. So maybe not apologizing, but saying, I feel bad with you. This grieves me, not because you're a disappointment, because I know you're going to have to face a consequence.
Yeah.
And that says, I feel with you. I'm on your side. I love you. I care about you. And that you may not see fruitful results in the first discipline when you try that. And then they'll be like, you don't feel bad. Get off my case.
Yeah.
But if you follow through with that inconsistency, that is going to help overcome those resentment issues, because they will feel attacked if you're yelling.
Yep.
If you go brain dead, think of a natural parallel consequence, and you deliver it with genuine empathy that you actually feel bad and you sound and look like you feel bad, that they have to face a negative consequence. That will show them, it'll demonstrate for them, you're more interested in helping them than punishing them. You're more interested in how they feel than what they do for you.
Yeah, I think that's great. I know some parents are afraid of discipline for different reasons. One of them could be they don't want to lose the trust that they already have built up with their students. So you go home, something's broken in the house. Okay, who broke this? Right? You're just trying to figure out what happened to this thing. They're afraid that if the kid says, oh, it was me, or hey, I heard you did this at school. What happened with this? What's going on? That the kid might be less eager to tell you when things don't go well or they mess up. So how does a parent keep that trust they have with their student where they're open to, hey, tell me when you mess up. I want to know because I want to help you with these things. But at the same time, the student's like, yeah, but you always discipline me when I do.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. And that's probably one of the main topics we're going to talk through on our lying podcast.
Ooh, a little teaser for the next one.
Yeah, a little prequel. But the truth is, trust is earned over a long period of consistent action. And so you can't trust them until they have demonstrated a long period of consistent behavior. And they cannot trust you and have no reason to trust you until you have demonstrated a long, consistent pattern of behavior. And so if your pattern of behavior is I yell and I take things away, they shouldn't trust you.
Right.
If you demonstrate consistently that you're calm, cool, and collected, and that you show love and empathy, and that you don't react, then they'll know, okay, this consequence is going to, and we'll cover this in the lying podcast, but if they're dishonest, they lose trust, and the consequences are exponentially worse than you just told me the truth.
Yeah.
Like, did you brush your teeth? Yes. Did you really brush your teeth? Let me check your toothbrush.
Yeah, that toothbrush is dry, buddy.
No. Okay. You know what the consequence would have been if you told me the truth, that you hadn't lied?
Just go brush your teeth.
You would have had to brush your teeth. Do you know what the consequence is now that you've told me a lie?
You got to brush your sister's teeth, too.
Yeah, the consequence is exponentially worse for lying. In my house, and this is just my home, you don't have to do it the way I did it, but we only gave severe punishments for two things. We only had two severe consequences that, like, you don't want to have.
Sure.
And that was for lying or hurting somebody on purpose. If you intentionally tried to hurt somebody or you lied about it, those were the big two in my house. It's like cussing me out. Okay, we can deal with that.
Wow,
hurting,
really?
You threw something against the wall, objects can be replaced. But you lie to me, now there's no way I can help you.
Okay.
Because if we can't be honest with each other, there's no reason for us to have a relationship. We have to know exactly what's going on. And one of the ways to breed that trust is to be vulnerable and honest with them. It's like, when I was your age, I made the same mistake.
Right.
And you know what? I blew it yesterday. I yelled at you, and I shouldn't have. I was wrong. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? For you to go and repent to your kids speaks volumes and earns that trust to say, okay, I'm not perfect, but at least I'm honest enough to admit it with you.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a ton of power in setting that example for them. especially as adults.
Yeah,
It's
so-
easy to say, I did that when I was your age too, but to do it now.
Yeah, if you actually do you lose your temper, it speaks volume for you to admit it to your kids
Yep.
every time. Like
That's
anytime you make a mistake. Like when I pray with my kids at night, if I've slipped up that day, whether it was with them or not, I pray with my kids every night, whether it was with my kids or not,
Yeah.
I repent in front of them. I pray, God, I screwed up today. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Yeah.
Help me to do better tomorrow.
Yeah, when I yelled at Pastor Blake that one time in the office. I'm just kidding. I have one last question and then one last other thing before we close. I just had the thought of, is this a good, and you can tell me, this is a terrible idea, but like a thought exercise with an older student, an older kid, of saying, hey, what do you think would be like a fair punishment for you?
Sure.
What do you think about that? I'm asking you, what do you think of proposing that question to a kid?
Oh, it's a healthy exercise. And in fact, I found when I've asked my kids what's an appropriate consequence for this, usually their response was something far worse than I would have come up with. It's like, maybe I should
Then you seem like the good guy. You're like,
maybe I should lose TV for a week. And it's like, really? A week? Wow. So
awesome.
it's appropriate. I mean, obviously, if they're just trying to get out of it and they're not participating in the responsibility, you got to take over and give them an appropriate consequence. But if they're just like, I should maybe just say I'm sorry and not do anything else.
yeah.
You got to take over at that
Yeah,
point. But if
for
they're
sure. It's not
participating in the
totally up to
conversation
them.
genuinely, yeah, that's a totally appropriate
I think
question.
it could help logically of like, hey, you understand this, there's some consequences here.
Yeah.
And then final thing, and this is news to you, Phil, for the podcast, for everyone listening right now. As I have talked about parenting for so long with no knowledge,
Yeah.
in April, I will finally have some knowledge of my own hands-on experience of parenting.
Oh.
That we're expecting our first kid in April.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you, Phil. This is live reaction.
Yeah,
I was trying to see
cool.
when I said it, he kind of looked over like, what is he about to say right now? So we know we're having a baby boy in April.
Awesome.
I know. I'm very excited to speak with a little bit more authority. Of course, parenting a baby, I've heard is not that difficult.
Yeah,
The
they're
sleep
basically
part.
pooping potatoes.
Yeah.
At least
So,
for the first couple of months.
I'm excited for it. I'll be re-listening to our podcast to get some information.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
And if you listen to this podcast, I did this for you because I want to know who listens to this thing.
Yeah, he's like, Olivia, we've been doing these podcasts, and I just don't feel like I've got any proper perspective. We need to have a kid right now so that we can speak with knowledge. This is the reason.
This podcast is the only reason we decided to have a kid. That's so funny. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. You are privy to some information now because you're a listener. So that it pays off to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
I hope you didn't fast forward to this part. But thanks so much for listening. And we will be back talking about lying and some bigger issues with students. And we're going to have some good content for you then.
All right.
Have a great week.